Afternoon, everybody. It's been a long time since I've put together any sort of update on my tropical and other plants that I've got growing here in Canberra. I've actually meant to do a big update on these quite a while ago, in fact, but it's been very busy at work and in other things. So as it happens, it gets put off and off and off until eventually you get home from work on one Saturday and think, all right, we're going to do it today. Today's the day. So this might end up being a little bit of a lengthy video just because of all the different plants that I've got and how long it's actually been. But let's kick straight into it, I guess. And I suppose what different zones set up in the property I'm at the moment, where different plants are kind of grouped together into different areas. And I guess the best place to start is the tropicals, seeing as though they were what I really wanted to report. So this is kind of my tropical zone currently. You would have noticed if you've watched my previous videos that I had a much larger collection at the end or just before winter last year, and obviously I did my little bit of a winter experiment. How did things go under the patio and the answer in general was fairly poorly. So some things did pull through and get through the spring, and it didn't help that we've had one of the coldest summers, springs and winters in recent history in Canberra. And in fact, typically in a Canberra summer we would get multiple days in the 30s, 34, 35, 36, pushing up to 40 even some years. But this year we ended up just having a single day so far where I think we got to 32 or 33, and the rest of the days have been very cold. And in fact, the next week coming up, we've got basically 20 and 21 degrees days, and we're still in summer. It's still only February. So coming off the back of one of the coldest winters in history and a very slow start to spring, a lot of the plants that I had that got through winter under cover, as soon as spring came along, there just wasn't the heat, and they just all slowly kind of succumbed. It's quite windy here, so I hope that this doesn't distract the sound quality of this too much. But let's get straight into what's still alive from last year. And some of these are new, by the way, and I'll point out the new ones. Lychee is one that survived. So this is a Bosworth Lychee, and right behind that, and I've lost the label and I can't remember the cultivar, but this is another lychee, and both of them pulled through. In fact, that's a long one. Sorry, this is a long one up the back here, and this is a lychee. And over here we actually have another long one. So this is just a seedling long one from Dally's, and they all came through quite well. So this lychee here did less well than the long uns did, but it is holding on. It hasn't put on a lot of new growth until recently, when we've just started in kind of January to have days where we were pushing over 30. It's really only started to put on growth then. This is a new one that's come in this year. It's a Mame Sapote, and it actually hasn't handled the kind of 20-25 degree days very well. It hasn't done much at all. It's got a little bit of growth in there since I've got it, but it hasn't really been doing much since I've owned it. The Jabba Takaba, I've got a few of these, and all of these Jabbos have come through from the last winter. So these are one that have pulled through. You've got another little one down here which isn't doing as well as the other, although it's starting to put on some new growth now. But the Jabbos all pulled through. I didn't lose any Jabba Takaba. And speaking of Jabba Takaba, I've got a couple over here, which was a trade that I made with another YouTuber in Canberra, Neil, and I'm sure some of you watch his channel. He's given me a few little plants that I've potted up, and I don't know what they all are. This one here is an Acha-Cha. I believe this is a yellow Jabba Takaba from memory. This one here, I just don't recall, and I'm really bad at forgetting things like that, but I'm sure Neil will be able to refresh my memory. And speaking of achacha, this was a new one that I got from Dali's this year, and anyone that had watched my previous videos would have remembered that they all look pretty good coming out of winter. They all held their leaves, they're fine undercover. They look like they were going to be pulling through, and I gave a pretty resounding, yeah, give them a shot rating for the achacha. I thought they were fine. Every single one died. Every single achacha died in the spring following. So that was really disappointing to me. But I guess that's what happens when you try to grow tropicals in Canberra. Black Sapote. This is actually a new one. The Black Sapote in general didn't do very well. In fact, an example of a Black Sapote that I had during my original videos, which I put down here in the shade because it wasn't performing very well, is this little fella here. Still a stick from winter. It's essentially dead. Might have to do something. That does have a single green leaf on the stem, but I don't think that really counts as alive. This is another yellow Jabba, I believe, and if it's not a yellow, remind me, Neil, please. Up the back here, I believe this is a Brazilian cherry, and down here was a plant that I thought I'd lost, but actually held on. This is a Batanga Tuba, and it's not doing a lot, and it is getting a lot of shade down there now. I might bring it out and give it a little bit more sun with these other ones. But he's held on quite well, and he was one that got through winter last year. Speaking of plants that didn't get through, all my Rolinias died last year, every single one of them. This is a Rolinia because I've got troubles accepting things. This is a new one that I purchased, and I'm going to do more to protect that this year. I'm not going to just leave it to chance. Down here we have an ice cream bean, Inga Edulis. I put this one in spring, and it did literally nothing. I thought it was dead for months and months. It's only when we started having a little bit warmer days now that it's come back. It's another new addition. It's a rose apple. Whether or not it's still here this time next year will yet to be seen. This one here, though, is one that pulled through. This one here pulled through quite well, in fact. It's a Wampy, and this one held up quite well under the winter conditions and then came out, didn't lose any leaves, hasn't done much since then, but at least got through the winter without the trouble, as did this one behind, which is a Macadamia. And the Macadamia pulled through without any trouble at all. This here is the only banana that survived, although now it's got a bit of height to it. I would say it's 10 foot tall, maybe 9 to 10 foot tall. Got a couple of pups coming off it, and this was the ladyfinger. I don't know what I'm going to do with that this year because it is obviously too large to be put under cover. I don't know what I can do to keep this plant alive, but maybe this is the end of it. Maybe I'll try wrapping it like M.I. Gardner, I think his channel is called, does. Over in this section, this is my white Sapote section. Different varieties. This big one here that's coming up now nearly over the fence was the one you might have seen in my videos undercover over winter, and the one that was doing really well over the entire winter period without any trouble. This is a Vernon. This plant was ordered from Perry's Fruit and Nut in South Australia, and if you watch my tasting white Sapote video, I ordered these at the same time, and they actually came to me in spring, so this hasn't done a Canberra winter. Over here though, speaking of the tasting video that I did, these plants here are some of the seedlings that I did in those videos. The germination of the white Sapote, they've now put on a significant amount of size, and I traded a few of these away to Neil, and I hope they're doing well on his side. And I think I just watched a video of his the other day that they look like they're all kicking along quite nicely. Some of these other white Sapote haven't done as much. This one I had over the winter, it's just kind of hanging along. I think that's just a seedling, and this is a named variety. I believe this is a Max Golden. Yeah, this is a Golden Globe. This one I didn't know if it was going to pull through or not. It stayed as a stick. It totally defoliated in winter, but has come back just a little bit in the last kind of few months. It started doing some things. Now over this way, this is the Anona section, and I know I had some Anonas over there. I had an Aurelinia over there, but this is my Cherimoyas and American Pawpaws. So starting at the back, these were the American Pawpaws that kind of did nothing. These came from Yamina, I believe the nursery is called. Yamina Nursery in Victoria. It's a named variety, and they were sticks for all of last year, but they've actually come up quite nicely. This is another one here. In the last kind of, since spring they came back. These Cherimoyas here, quite large trees. They also came from Perry's Fruit and Nut. I had them shipped over from South Australia, and they are doing quite well. It's yet to see how these guys go through winter. This guy here had a bit of trouble. Started to put some flowers on. It was really struggling, and sometimes plants will do that if they're not doing very well. They'll try to flower. This one is actually losing it. It's not standing very straight. I'll have to fix that later. But this was, it started since it's warmed up a bit. It's picked up nicely. Down here in this pot behind, this is the only seedling Cherimoya that I managed to get to germinate. You would have remembered I had all of those Cherimoya seeds in a little bag trying to get them to go. Many of them rotted, and this is the only one that actually survived, but now it's doing nicely. And it's looking forward to see how this one goes. I like germinating a seed, and eventually I'll get it to fruit one day, hopefully, if I don't kill it, and that will be quite an accomplishment for me. In these little pots here, these are all the American Pawpaws you would have seen in my other videos where I was talking about how hardy they are. And speaking of how hardy they are, have a look in this. Another little one that didn't even realise was in here has come up. They surprised me how hardy these are, at least the very young seedlings. An interesting thing though, nothing touches the leaves of these Anonas, except for this one here, where almost every leaf has been attacked by something. In the same pot where the plant next door has full leaves, no one cares about them, and this one here is totally devastated. Every night something's coming and eating this. I don't know what it is about this particular seedling that makes it that susceptible to bugs, but curious. This is actually a walnut that I had that was suffering a bit of sun damage. I put it in the shade to pull it through. And these are some more of those American Pawpaws in little pots. And again, another little one that I just ignored popping up in these pots. Down here, another one. It seems that these seeds just, they just come up, which I actually really like. Over here, this is another banana actually that came through winter. This is one of the blue Javas that I had in the pot. The other one succumbed, but this one here is still alive. This is a curry plant I've had for many years, and I don't really bother too much about it. It seems to do okay. I haven't really been through the fig collection too much in these videos. I know I might have talked about them or shown them briefly, and if you can find the website that I really don't do anything on, you can see where these are all cuttings just 18 months ago. So these are 18-month-old cuttings. They're all in the process of fruiting or trying to fruit. And they're all actually heritage varieties. And one day when they start to fruit, I'll do a bit of taste testing on these figs. And if anyone out there is a bit of a fig fan, you'll be able to look through those. Out of all the figs, there's a few that I like and I'm interested in more than others. This is one of them. This is a Violette de Bordeaux, which is one that I've always wanted to try and never had the opportunity to. It's just a heritage variety that's not available very well in Canberra, in Australia. And over here is another one. This is a panache, or sometimes pronounced panache, which has got this variegated fig. and is very hard to find anywhere in Australia. And when you buy a cutting, there's always a risk that you're not getting what you think you're getting. But this is undeniably the variegated panache fig. Over this way, I haven't really shown this section of the garden at all, because these are all temperate fruits, and I was really more interested in my my tropicals. There are some subtropicals in here, although they're not hardy, they're not cold worrying. This is a loquat, for instance. But all of these plants in this little section here are going to eventually be planted in the ground, and they're going to form the structure of a food forest, which I'm going to develop over the next several years, and I'll probably end up filming. I've got a whole bunch of plants in here that we won't focus on them all. So my son's just following me around with the video. We've got apples over here. There's 5 or 6 different varieties of heritage apples in here. We have cherries. There's another cherry here. We have chestnuts. And I've got about 4 or 5 different varieties of chestnuts. And the chestnuts and some of the other big trees, this is another cherry, are going to form the kind of anchor trees, the really big overstory trees, to fill up kind of a vacant plot of land. This is a flowering plant. It's a Lunicera fragrantissima, otherwise known as winter honeysuckle. We've got some pecans, another big overstory tree that's going to be established. We have peaches, nectarines, we have blueberries, bunch of citrus. This is a kumquat. Another citrus down here. This is a mandarin. Another subtropical actually over here, just hanging around in the corner. This is a kwai muck. Hasn't done much since I got it in spring this year. It's kind of just sitting here. A little bit disappointing as a plant, actually, just in general. It's got a few kind of new leaves coming on, but nothing fantastic. Got another mandarin variety in here. These avocados were all overwintered, and they're all doing fine. So if you remember, we had a couple of bacons, we had a fuerte, there's a wort, this is the bacon, and they've all pulled through the winter undercover without a problem at all. One of the surprises though, one of the very big surprises that I had from last year, one of the first plants that succumbed in my first videos in winter was this. This rotted the entire way through the stem, quite quickly on in the picture. If you have a look down the stem, the rotted stem is still here, and it died. This is the champagne fruit, or the babaco, and this actually had a few fruit on it, if you remember, at the end of summer last year, and then I put it in the cover and it died. This one sprouted back up from the stem, and I was very surprised. I'd paid it no attention, and up it came one day, and I was shocked beyond belief. We've got walnuts in here. We've got a few different types of walnuts. We've got another chestnut. We have some apricots. This, and this big one next to it. These are Japanese raisin trees. More chestnuts, more walnuts, and I guarantee that as I put all of these in the ground over the next 12, 18, 24, 36 months, you guys can watch them all as they grow, and watch it basically a plot of grass, kind of, hopefully, if all goes well, turned into a food forest. We've got pear here. These plants here are very uncommon in Australia. You don't see them very much. They are Saskatoon berries, or service berries. They're very cold tolerant, kind of large shrubs / bushes, almost trees, that are very, very cold tolerant, down to Canadian temperatures, negative 10, 15 degrees Celsius, maybe even more. Chestnuts, more chestnuts. And in fact, with the chestnuts, while we're speaking about them, these chestnuts actually at the moment have both male and female flowers on them. So the long stem you see there is the male flowers, and these female flowers are these kind of spikes on it. If they get pollinated, will turn into the chestnuts that we all know and love. Blood orange over here, got a plum over here, a bay tree that's been mistreated. Got a whole bunch of new plants that just arrived, just waiting to be potted up. Actually, they were falling down with the wind, but we've got in there some blueberries, we've got some more walnuts in there, got another chestnut in here, and these are all going to kind of fill in that food for us in different bits and pieces. Another nectarine here, and these are all being held in different size pots, and it's really just to get them through until they're ready to be planted in the ground. Here's another trade from Neil, which obviously needs new staking. This is a yellow dragon fruit. It's put on a fair bit of size. I need to think of a much better way to kind of tie that up before I lose a branch in the wind. We've had a few storms this year. And then over this side we have the infirmary. We have an American pawpaw, not doing as well as its brothers over in the other corner. So I put that over here where it's got a little bit more shade, a little bit less sun. We had a Yuzu. I transplanted it, and then it died all the way down to the base, and then it's kind of put off these new shoots. Now I'm fairly sure that this is still Yuzu and not a rootstock. It's come from quite low down the stem, but I can't see the graft on this plant at all, so I'm not sure if it is a grafted plant. If it is grafted, it's quite difficult to tell where the original graft was. But these leaves are very kaffir-like, which is similar to what a yuzu kind of looks like, the kaffir lime leaves. Often the rootstock they use on these citrus plants are the trifoliate, and they're kind of a windy or a flying dragon rootstock, which is like a windy stem. The rootstocks do have very large thorns on, but so does the yuzu, so it's quite hard to tell. I'm not sure why it just died off. I transplanted the same as everything else. All the other citrus I transplanted at the same time were fine. This was another winter honeysuckle that perished. This is another one that came back from the dead. It's a Brazilian cherry. I'd left this one for dead, and then it had started sprouting back, much like the Babaco over in the corner there. So I've let this one sit in the infirmary for a bit, and hopefully that'll come back. We have a white spreader seedling which succumbed for no good reason. It was over with the other ones, exact same watering, exact same fertilizing. It just died. It was fine over winter. In here it started some seedlings. These are all subtropical seedlings. They're gosh, their name is escaping me at the moment. Bright purple flowers seen everywhere through Sydney. Jacarandas, of course, the jacaranda seedlings that I'm going to hopefully, I've planted a fair few of them, get them a bit bigger, get them a bit hardier, and hopefully the jacarandas can pull through. There is a jacaranda apparently in Yass, right next to the visitor centre, which survives and flowers every year. So if they can get the jacaranda to live in Yass, I'm sure I can get it to live in Canberra. So maybe a bit of a rushed tour through this garden here today, but a little bit of an update for anyone who kind of watches, if anyone is actually interested and is following along. These are a little bit disappointing. These are some of the subtropicals I got through. They're very slow growing. These are the palms that make the jelly palms that make fruits that are quite nice, can be turned into wines apparently. So I'm looking forward to them as well, but they haven't done much in the last 6 months. I think that frond they're both putting off is the first thing they've done at all, in fact, but they are very hardy down to -7, -8, so they're good that I have them. Alright guys, I do have some plants at the front as well, but I think I'm going to wrap this here. It's been a long enough video as it is, and I'm sure if anyone actually watches all the way through, You've probably got bored of me kind of droning on by this stage. But yeah, look, if you've got any questions or want to know anything else, just flick me a message and I'll try to respond as I can. Thanks a lot, guys.